What if I told you that a single handshake in October 2013 would transform Australia's criminal underworld forever? That 90% of one of the country's most feared motorcycle gangs would disappear overnight, only to re-emerge under a new banner that would dominate the drug trade for the next decade. Tonight, we uncover the shocking truth behind the most audacious gang takeover in Australian criminal history. How the Mongols Motorcycle Club didn't just arrive in Australia, they conquered it through violence, intimidation, and a business model so ruthless that even hardened criminals trembled at their name. This is the story of how a California-born gang took control of Australia's billion-dollar methamphetamine empire in just one devastating move, and how their reign of terror would leave bodies scattered across the Gold Coast and change the face of organized crime down under forever. But to understand how they seized power, we first need to go back to where it all began. 1. The Mongols' origins. December 5th, 1969, Montebello, California. 10 Vietnam veterans gathered in a garage, united by their rejection from the Hells Angels for being Hispanic. What they created that night would become one of the most feared criminal organizations on the planet, the Mongols Motorcycle Club. Named after Genghis Khan's legendary warriors, the Mongols embodied everything their namesake represented: conquest through brutality, expansion through warfare, and control through fear. Their patch, a caricature of a Mongol warrior riding a Harley-Davidson, would soon become synonymous with violence across multiple continents. By the 1980s, the Mongols had declared war on the Hells Angels, sparking a bloody conflict that would rage for decades. Unlike other motorcycle clubs that operated locally, the Mongols had global ambitions. They understood something that would make them uniquely dangerous. The international drug trade was becoming a trillion-dollar business, and whoever controlled the supply chains would control everything. The Mongols weren't just another biker gang. They were a criminal corporation disguised as a motorcycle club. Their structure was militaristic, their discipline absolute, and their violence surgical. Members underwent psychological evaluation before admission. Their constitution, a 70-page document, outlined not just club rules, but operational procedures for drug trafficking, money laundering, and territorial expansion. What made them truly dangerous was their adaptability. While other gangs clung to traditional territories, the Mongols identified emerging markets. And by 2010, they had identified the perfect target: Australia. Australia offered everything a sophisticated criminal organization needed: isolated geography that made border control difficult, massive coastlines with thousands of entry points, a wealthy population with an insatiable appetite for drugs. Most importantly, drug prices in Australia were astronomical. A kilogram of methamphetamine that cost $8,000 in China sold for $650,000 in Sydney. But Australia already had established motorcycle gangs. The Hells Angels, Bandidos, and Rebels controlled different territories. Breaking into this market would require something the Mongols had perfected over 4 decades: strategic violence combined with business acumen. The Australian opportunity. 2013 was the perfect storm for Mongols' expansion into Australia. The Finks Motorcycle Club, one of Australia's oldest gangs, was facing an existential crisis. Queensland's new anti-gang legislation threatened to declare them a criminal organization, which would have effectively outlawed their existence. Founded in Adelaide in 1969, the Finks had grown from a small social club into a major player in Australia's criminal underworld. Their name came from the Wizard of Id comic strip, where peasants would shout, "The king is a Fink." But by 2013, they were facing their own rebellion. The club's internal politics were fracturing. Leadership disputes, police pressure, and changing demographics were tearing the organization apart. Younger members wanted more aggressive expansion into drug trafficking. Older members preferred traditional revenue streams like protection rackets and illegal gambling. Enter Peter "Chop" Emerton, a businessman from the central coast of New South Wales who had quietly established contact with Mongols leadership in California. Emerton wasn't your typical biker. Clean-cut, articulate, and strategically minded, he understood that the future of organized crime lay not in street-level violence, but in sophisticated international operations. Emerton had been studying the Mongols' American operations for years. He was impressed by their business model: vertical integration of drug importation, manufacturing, and distribution, combined with legitimate front businesses. Unlike Australian gangs that operated reactively, the Mongols planned strategically, sometimes years in advance. In early 2013, Emerton traveled to California for what he described as business meetings. What actually happened was a series of presentations to Mongols leadership about the Australian opportunity. His pitch was compelling. Australia represented an untapped market worth billions of dollars, with existing infrastructure that could be acquired rather than built from scratch. The Mongols were intrigued. They had been studying international expansion for years, with chapters already established in Mexico, Germany, and several other countries. But Australia offered something unique: established criminal networks that could be absorbed wholesale rather than competed against. By September 2013, the deal was set. The Mongols would offer the Finks something no other gang could: protection from government dissolution through affiliation with an international organization, access to global drug supply networks, and most importantly, a proven business model that had generated hundreds of millions in profits. The Great Takeover. October 13th, 2013. A conference room in a nondescript hotel in Queensland. What happened next would be described by police as the largest motorcycle club amalgamation in Australian history. The Finks' national leadership, facing imminent legal dissolution, made a decision that shocked the criminal underworld. In a single vote, they agreed to patch over to the Mongols MC. Overnight, 90% of Finks members would surrender their colors, destroy their tattoos, and swear allegiance to a gang most had never met. The logistics were staggering. Over 350 members across 5 states had to be processed, vetted, and inducted according to Mongols protocols. Club assets worth millions of dollars, properties, businesses, vehicles, and drug stockpiles, were transferred to Mongols' control. The operation required coordination across multiple time zones and involved legal documentation to legitimize the asset transfers. But the Mongols weren't just acquiring members. They were inheriting an entire criminal infrastructure. The Finks controlled drug distribution networks across Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and Western Australia. They had established relationships with Asian suppliers, corrupt officials, and money laundering operations. Their legitimate businesses provided perfect cover for criminal activities. Mark Ferret Moroney, a longtime Finks member who became national president of the Mongols Australia, later described the transition as the most professional operation I'd ever seen. The Mongols had prepared detailed handbooks covering everything from drug pricing structures to territorial boundaries. They brought accountants, lawyers, and logistics experts to ensure seamless operations. Within weeks, the results were obvious. Drug shipments that previously took months to organize were happening weekly. The Mongols' international connections provided access to higher quality products at better prices. Their business model emphasized efficiency and scalability rather than territorial disputes with rival gangs. The transformation wasn't just operational, it was cultural. The Mongols introduced military-style discipline and corporate-level planning. Members were required to attend business meetings, submit financial reports, and follow standardized procedures. Those who couldn't adapt were expelled. Those who embraced the new model found themselves earning more money than they had ever imagined. But the most significant change was strategic. While other Australian gangs focused on local markets, the Mongols began thinking globally. They established direct relationships with South American cartels, Asian manufacturing syndicates, and European distribution networks. Australia wasn't just a market. It was becoming a hub for international drug trafficking. By December 2013, police intelligence indicated that the Mongols controlled approximately 40% of methamphetamine distribution on Australia's east coast. They had become the most powerful criminal organization in the country virtually overnight. Building the empire. The Mongols didn't just want to participate in Australia's drug trade, they wanted to revolutionize it. Their approach was unlike anything Australian law enforcement had encountered. Traditional motorcycle gangs operated like street corners, territorial, reactive, and focused on immediate profits. The Mongols operated like a multinational corporation. They invested in infrastructure, developed supply chains, and created sustainable competitive advantages. Their methamphetamine operation was particularly sophisticated. While Australian gangs typically purchased finished products from Asian suppliers, the Mongols established their own production network. They recruited chemists, purchased equipment, and created laboratories that could produce industrial quantities of high-purity drugs. The numbers were staggering. By 2015, intelligence reports suggested the Mongols were producing over 200 kilograms of methamphetamine monthly across their Australian operations. Street value, approximately $130 million. But production was only the beginning. Distribution was handled through a franchise model that would have impressed legitimate retailers. Local chapters operated like franchisees, purchasing products from central production facilities and selling through established networks. Quality control was rigorous. Products were tested for purity, branded for identification, and backed by customer service policies. Money laundering was equally sophisticated. The Mongols established a network of legitimate businesses across Australia. Construction companies, restaurants, car dealerships, and professional services. Drug profits were injected as business income, creating massive cash flows that appeared completely legal. Real estate became a particular focus. Using front companies and nominee arrangements, the Mongols purchased properties worth tens of millions of dollars across Australia's major cities. These weren't just investments, they were operational bases, storage facilities, and money laundering vehicles. But perhaps most importantly, the Mongols understood something other gangs didn't. Sustainable criminal enterprise required corruption of legitimate institutions. They systematically recruited corrupt officials, infiltrated legitimate businesses, and established relationships with professionals who could provide legal cover for illegal activities. The result was an organization that was becoming increasingly difficult to prosecute. Traditional policing focused on street-level dealers and obvious crimes. The Mongols operated at levels where criminal activity was disguised as legitimate business operations. Violence and control. The Mongols' business success was built on a foundation of calculated violence. Unlike random gang warfare, Mongols' violence served strategic purposes, eliminating competition, enforcing discipline, and sending messages to potential rivals. The assassination of Shane Bowden on October 12, 2020, perfectly exemplified their operational philosophy. Bowden, a 48-year-old former Mongol who had rejoined the Finks, represented everything the organization wouldn't tolerate: disloyalty, public defiance, and potential intelligence leaks. The execution was planned with military precision. For 3 weeks prior to the killing, Mongols members tracked Bowden using GPS devices secretly attached to his vehicle. They studied his routines, identified vulnerabilities, and planned multiple scenarios. When they struck, it was with overwhelming force. 21 shots fired in his own driveway, followed by the immediate destruction of evidence through burning vehicles. The message was clear: defection meant death, regardless of previous relationships or current affiliations. But the Bowden assassination also revealed the Mongols' operational sophistication. Police discovered that the killers had used encrypted communications, purchased vehicles through false identities, and established alibis months in advance. This wasn't random violence, it was corporate enforcement. The Mongols maintained discipline through a carefully calibrated system of rewards and punishments. Loyal members received financial benefits, protection, and advancement opportunities. Disloyal members faced escalating consequences, culminating in execution. The Gold Coast became ground zero for this violence. Between 2020 and 2023, the region experienced what police described as an unprecedented escalation in organized crime violence. Firebombings, drive-by shootings, and assassination attempts became routine. The Mongols were systematically eliminating rivals and establishing territorial control. But the violence wasn't random. It was strategic. Each attack served multiple purposes: eliminating specific threats, demonstrating capability to rivals, and maintaining internal discipline. The Mongols had learned from decades of gang warfare that successful violence required careful planning and clear objectives. Their approach to territorial control was equally sophisticated. Rather than engaging in public warfare with established gangs, they targeted specific operations and personnel. Drug shipments were intercepted, key personnel were recruited or eliminated, and financial networks were disrupted. Within months, rival organizations found their operations severely compromised. Law enforcement response. Australian law enforcement struggled to comprehend what they were facing. Traditional anti-gang strategies focused on street-level enforcement and reactive investigation. The Mongols required a completely different approach. December 3, 2020, marked the first coordinated national response. Operation Morpheus involved over 300 officers from 7 different agencies executing simultaneous raids across Australia. 18 Mongols members were arrested, with seizures including nearly 30 firearms, large quantities of drugs, and significant cash amounts. But the operation revealed the challenge law enforcement faced. Unlike traditional gangs that operated from obvious locations, the Mongols were integrated into legitimate society. Raids targeted businesses, professional offices, and suburban homes rather than obvious clubhouses. Detective Superintendent Jason MacArthur described the investigation as unlike anything we've encountered in Australian organized crime. The Mongols used sophisticated counter-surveillance techniques, encrypted communications, and compartmentalized operations that made traditional investigative methods largely ineffective. The breakthrough came through international cooperation. American law enforcement shared intelligence about Mongols' operations, financial networks, and organizational structure. European agencies provided information about their money laundering techniques. Asian law enforcement contributed details about their supply networks. But even with international cooperation, prosecuting the Mongols proved extremely difficult. Their operations were designed to maintain plausible deniability at every level. Financial transactions appeared legitimate, communications were encrypted, and operational security was military grade. The most successful prosecutions came through financial investigation rather than traditional criminal charges. Following money laundering networks and unexplained wealth legislation proved more effective than attempting to prove direct criminal involvement. By 2024, law enforcement estimated that they had disrupted approximately 30% of Mongols' operations in Australia. But the organization's adaptability meant that disrupted operations were quickly replaced by new ones. Current status and future. Today, the Mongols MC controls an estimated 60% of methamphetamine distribution on Australia's east coast. Their operations generate annual revenues estimated at over $2 billion, making them one of the most profitable criminal organizations in the Southern Hemisphere. Recent arrests in 2024 under Operation Tiger Mailang revealed the continuing sophistication of their operations. Police seized 32 tons of methamphetamine-infused paraffin wax destined for Australia from Malaysia, a trafficking method that demonstrated their continued innovation in smuggling techniques. The organization has evolved beyond traditional motorcycle gang structure. While maintaining the cultural elements of brotherhood and loyalty, their operations now resemble a sophisticated criminal corporation with global reach. Intelligence reports suggest they have established partnerships with Mexican cartels, Asian manufacturing syndicates, and European distribution networks. Australia serves as both a lucrative market and a strategic hub for regional operations extending into New Zealand, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands. But success has brought new challenges. Increased law enforcement attention, internal power struggles, and expansion difficulties have created vulnerabilities that rivals are beginning to exploit. The 2024 arrests of senior leadership in multiple states have disrupted operational continuity. Most concerning for law enforcement is the Mongols' influence on Australian criminal culture. Their business model has been adopted by other organizations, creating a more sophisticated and dangerous criminal landscape. The days of territorial street gangs are ending, replaced by international criminal corporations operating across multiple jurisdictions. Reflection: the Mongols' takeover of Australia's drug trade represents more than just criminal success. It's a case study in how modern organized crime has evolved. Through strategic planning, international cooperation, and business discipline, they transformed a fragmented criminal market into a unified criminal empire. Their impact extends far beyond drug trafficking. They've corrupted legitimate institutions, influenced political processes, and created criminal networks that will outlast any individual arrests or prosecutions. The war against the Mongols isn't just about law enforcement. It's about preventing the complete criminalization of entire sectors of the Australian economy. Because once criminal organizations achieve this level of sophistication and integration, removing them becomes almost impossible. Today, the Mongols MC isn't just a motorcycle gang. They're a multinational criminal corporation that happens to ride motorcycles. And their Australian operation remains their most profitable and strategically important territory. The conquest is complete. The empire endures. And the future belongs to whoever can outthink, outfight, and outlast the Mongols on their own terms. The question isn't whether they can be stopped. It's whether anyone will try before it's too late.